It's February 4th, which means Puxatani Phil has seen his shadow.
The world's most famous weatherman, the groundhog.
And we're getting more winter, but here in Arizona, it definitely does not feel like that. We are going to be 75 today, and we are looking to break 80 this week, maybe even closer to 85. So I don't know about these winter projects. It's just not feeling very wintry. Today we're going to be talking about January and February, what I made, what I am working on, and all of my plans for coming up, and maybe even a little bit of a stash review as well. First up though, let's talk about what I made in January. The first project that I finished is the Crop or Not cardigan by MJ's Off the Hook Designs. This turned out really nice. I love this. Now, I did a couple of things with this that are a little bit different. One, I wanted to use the Colorama color phasing halo, which has a really wonderful, luscious, soft, squishy kind of feel, but it also has this amazing color phasing, color changing look to it. And so I really wanted to use that, but that meant that I had to modify the pattern just a little bit. And that's because I wanted the colors to look the same on both sides. So rather than finish off on one side and then just start the skein where I finished off, then it would give kind of an uneven look. I actually had a second skein that when I had to start the second side, I pulled off enough of the color so that it was very close to where I had ended in the same spot on this side, or this side, whichever side came first. So then when I tied on, it looked essentially like both sides worked up with the same type of color pattern. So the phase looks very similar on both sides. And I think I accomplished that extremely well. Now, I added 2 extra rows on this. And honestly, the one thing that I don't think I'm really happy with is I think I should have added more rows. Hers is pretty cropped when you see it, but then there's other ones that are longer, and I would have liked to have mine kind of right in this range here, so not a full-length cardigan, but not a super crop. And when I wear this, hopefully you can see enough of me to get the idea here. Yeah, arm in. And I don't know if this is because I have larger breasts, but it comes just a little bit high on me here. I would have liked it to be kind of more in this range. Overall, I'm totally okay with this because I'm probably not going to wear this out all of that often. This is more of I wanted something that I could cozy up around the house when it does get chilly in here, those 12 days out of the year that it gets cool in my house. I wanted to have something that I could wear that was going to be really soft and warm. And even with all the holes, and I don't know if it's because of this yarn or the texture or what it is, but this gets very warm. So it is perfect for what I need it for, even if I would have liked to have had it a little bit longer. So I am really thrilled with the way this came out overall. And I would make it again, which I think is a big deal. Like, if I find a pattern that I like and I can say, yes, I would make it again, that makes me happy. The one thing that I did notice, though, and is something that you might want to keep in mind, is that the holes at the shoulders, because that's where a lot of the weight is coming in, they do tend to stretch out. So your the way that this is made is going to cause the holes in the shoulders, the stitch gaps, to be much bigger than maybe you might like to see it. Versus down here where there's not a lot of weight pulling on it, so the holes aren't going to be as big. Just something to keep in mind with the overall pattern. Overall, I am really happy with it, and would love to try and make another one. But this yarn is very soft. I'm pretty happy, even though it's an acrylic. It's got the halo to kind of make it look like a mohairish kind of thing. I don't know. I just really like it. Now, the only other project that I completed in January is this cowl. This is the Artfully Simple Infinity Scarf. And it is kind of a mesh, which I like a lot for our Arizona winters. Because it's not going to be really warm. I don't want something that is super warm. And this can actually be worn a few different ways. There's actually part of the pattern is to create a little tie for it. So I have the tie on here now. And you can wear it just like this with the tie on there. This actually is supposed to face out. This is just from a necklace that I bought probably decades ago, so I couldn't tell you how to get another one if you really like that. Sorry, I just rated my jewelry my jewelry box for that. But that's the tie for it, and so if you don't want to wear the tie, you can actually double wrap it. So even with it double wrapped, it's not so up around my neck. It's a little bit looser. It's still warm. I still have some heat retention in here, but it's not like, super, super warm. So there is that benefit. She actually has it where I don't know how she does it, but there's some way on here that you can kind of drape it over your shoulders too and pin it up. And I don't quite know what it is. Not sure I get that. And maybe I didn't make it quite wide enough because I think I stopped a few rows earlier because I didn't want something that was super thick. But, golly gee. Well, I just found the hook on the floor I've been looking for. Something like that. I'm not sure exactly. But, I used a yarn that I had in my stash called Boboli from Berroco. I believe this yarn is discontinued, and there's a really good reason for it because it probably broke 6 or 8 times while I was crocheting this. I mean, just it's what's called a thick and thin yarn. So there's places where it's really thin spun, and then there's places where it's really fat. And those places where it's fat, it just sort of gently pulls apart quite easily. So it broke many, many times. And in fact, if your eye is keen, you'll probably see lots of places where I had to tie this off in order to keep going because of that yarn breakage. And you know what? Overall, it's fine. I love, love, love this color. I think it's absolutely a stunning color and perfect for me in the colors that I like. The yarn is gorgeous. It's just not a lot of fun to work with. So that was the only other piece that I finished in January. And that's because I almost finished another piece. And let me show you a little bit more about that. The other piece that I almost finished, this will kind of take me into my whips and my plans for February, is the Sandy Shells wraparound cardigan, also by MJ Designs, MJ Off the Hook Designs. This one is a wraparound, and this is almost done. So I'm going to kind of try it on here and show it to you a little bit. It's not fully stitched up, and I'll tell you the whole story here. But basically, it kind of goes like this. Here's one sleeve, and the sleeve is meant to be a little bit longer, but I don't like them that long, so I made it shorter. And then it has these 2 pieces that will wrap around like that when it's sewed up, and they'll tie in the back. The problem is with this lovely, lovely sleeve, when I first started making it, I realized that it was going to be really big on my arm. I kind of have thin, tiny arms. So I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to be way too big. And so this one, I crocheted at the smaller size and thought, oh, well, that's perfect. This is about how drapey I want it to be on my arm. So that's perfect. The problem is that when I did that, I did not account for how tight it's going to be up here. And that is a problem. So I already took this one off and started to recrochet it. This is I just need to stitch it on now at the wider size. So you can kind of see the drape of this one versus the drape of this one. So this one is definitely much drapier, but that also means that up here it's going to fit the armpit area much better. I'm hoping that it's going to be okay. This is actually supposed to be a little bit of a drop sleeve, so I'm hoping that it'll be okay overall. What I did do on this, I modified it. You might be able to see this is a little bit tapered, and that's because I did the first 4 rows, 4 sets. And if you look at the pattern, you'll see that every 4 rows is 1 set. So I did the first 4 sets with the recommended hook size. And then I did 2 sets with a size smaller. And then I finished it off with a 3rd smaller size, so that it has more of a taper. That way, down towards the bottom, it's not quite as loose. I know some people love that big, loose, flowy. It drives me nuts. If I'm like having to like pull it out of my way so that it's not getting into my food, that bugs me. So I wanted something that was a little bit more tapered. If I hadn't had to remake the sleeves, this would have been done in January.
That's right, I am a slacker.
So I anticipate having this done and wrapped up by the end of the week is my hope. And so I can check this off of that pattern. But that's the Sandy Shells Wrap Cardigan by MJ's Off the Hook Crochet. Now, I also have a project in the works that I don't want to give away entirely, but I did buy some yarn this month for that, or last month for that. I bought some of the Karen Simply Soft, and I got the vintage, and then I also got this really pretty, it's kind of a mauve-y color, and then this green color. And so I'm alternating these, and I will show you this project as soon as I'm done with it. I should be wrapping that up maybe in a week and a half to 2 weeks-ish. We'll just kind of see how much yarning I get done. But I've also been working on this one through January. So even though I didn't finish a lot in January, I actually have been working on a decent amount of projects in January. And then I also started my very first blanket. Now, this is not a temperature blanket. I honestly thought about it, and I'm like, I even did this video on temperature blankets, but then I realized I don't think I have the patience for a temperature blanket. So what I opted to do, I am making a granny square blanket, which, for those that know me, might be like, you're doing what? You're making a granny square blanket? Because truth be told, I have had this stigma against granny squares. And what I've realized is that my stigma is not against granny squares. It's that I don't like the multicolored, color changing boho style granny squares. What I do like are variegated granny squares that are not traditional granny squares, but even the more traditional, if it uses a variegated yarn like this, I think that's perfectly lovely. I have no problems with that. Or if it's a solid color, no problem with that. So it's really all about, for me, I don't love the stark color changes. So it's more the vibe that you traditionally get. Like the Red Heart Granny Square yarn, you won't see me using that because there is not a single color combination in that I'm like, oh, that's lovely. No, to me they're all hideous. No offense if that's your thing, it's just not mine, and that's okay. But I do like these different colors. Now, I decided, and I kind of checked in with my husband. Our living room is very neutral colors, lots of browns, very, earthy kind of colors. I live in the desert, so makes sense. And then I have pops of blue and pops of red in there as well. So he went with the blue. I used this. I love this yarn in blue camo stripe as my base inspiration, and I crocheted up a couple of the squares. I actually had purchased probably about 8 different skeins of different variegated yarns to see which ones I ended up liking the best. And it turned out that it was this blue variegated that I and my husband sort of both agreed on, and we're like, this is the one. So this is what I crocheted up, and then I wanted to go back and get complementary colors that pulled from this. So I ended up getting this blue, which is night blue. And I also picked up this brown, kind of a tan, which is walnut. Very appropriate color name for that one, walnut. So as I crochet them up, I kind of get this color pattern here. This might need to be, I think I'm going to wash these before I put them together. I'm afraid this blue might bleed quite a bit, so I'm going to wash them all first and see if a little bit of that color bleeds out. And if it does, it's honestly totally okay because it's a little bit bright compared to the other blues that are in here, but not too bad. So this project I decided to take on because I do a weekly group with some gals, usually between 4 and 8 other gals, and about half of us knit and half of us crochet. And oftentimes we're so chatty that if I'm trying to count or focus on a pattern, it doesn't go well, and I end up getting home and just ripping out every stitch that I did during the process of that group. So I wanted something that I could work on or even TV time when I'm like, oh, I've got a headache, I really don't feel like thinking about the project, but I still want to be doing something besides just sitting here on the couch watching TV. So I needed something that I could work on during those times. And that was my plan. And some of the gals, as they saw me working on it, they're like, oh yeah, but then you're going to have to sew all of that together. And I told them, I said, you know what? You're right. And if I choose not to, that's okay too. I'm going to let myself off the hook. If this blanket never gets completed because I don't feel like crocheting or stitching in everything together, I'm totally fine with that. At least it gives me something that I can work on in the meantime. And if it turns into something else, a sweater, whatever, who knows? So that's my other current work in progress. Now I have some fun plans for February. And I need to get back to doing some quick win projects. I don't feel like I had, because I only completed 2 projects total in January, and that's not usually like me. I like to usually finish one big project and 2 or 3 smaller projects. And I didn't get that done. So I realized that it's because I was so focused on trying to get 2 big projects done that I ended up not getting any more than that done. My plans for February and coming up, I'm going to work on making a couple of headbands because I took up Pilates and I'm loving it, but I can't wear a ponytail like this because my head's usually back against the reformer. So I want some headbands that I can wear to kind of keep all of the loose hair out of the way. And why not crochet them instead of just going out and buying them? So I've got tons of little scrap yarn. I want to make some headbands, but I also want to make some more yarn cozies. And this is what I just sort of whipped up on a whim. Yarn cozies are those little bags that you can make to hold your skeins of yarn. Oops, that's attached. I can't use that one. Here, let me see if I can put it on this one. Nope, it's too big for that one. Anyway, you just place your yarn in there so that you can pull the yarn out and it doesn't unravel around the outside. Now, I know you can use things like hair hooks and stuff like that to kind of keep the outside from unraveling. That one I don't have it. See, I'm just not doing a very good demonstration right now. Like this one uses a bobby pin. But at least if you use a yarn cozy, it keeps the yarn from kind of unraveling and getting to be more messy. And it's got a drawstring, so if you want to, draw it around the top. I did not use a pattern for these. I know there are lots of patterns on Ravelry for yarn cozies, whether you're knitting or crocheting them. So if you want a pattern, you certainly could look one up. But my plan, in addition to making a couple of headbands, is to make several out of these out of scrap yarn. So bonus, I get to use up some of the scrap yarn that I have. And I think that's going to keep some of my yarn stash, especially the stuff that I'm currently using, a little bit cleaner and more manageable. And then the big plan that I have for February, I'm going to select a t-shirt pattern because I wear more t-shirts than anything else. So I want to pick a t-shirt pattern, and then I'm going to select 2 or 3 yarns, and maybe I'll expand it as I go, but I'm going to start with 2 or 3 yarns that are the same weight, but they are different in some way. Either one is wool and one is cotton, or one is solid and one is variegated or tonal, or something along those lines, so that it mixes it up. And I want to do the same t-shirt using different yarns that will allow me to kind of learn a little bit more about how yarns work, how coloring works within yarns, because I know that there's a lot of patterns you can't do with variegated yarns in crochet. It just won't look right. So kind of get a better understanding of that. What the drape sort of works out to be like. If I'm using a wool, it's going to drape very differently than if I'm using a cotton versus an alpaca, something like that. And so I think that using the same pattern for all of those will be an interesting experiment towards learning a lot in that regard. So that's kind of my plan, and I don't think I'll get more than one completed in February, but I would like to at least get one of those completed. So complete the sandy shell top, complete this sort of surprise secret project that I'm working on that I'll come out with a video if it turns out okay. And if not, I'll at least tell you that it was a failed project, but that's my goal. And then complete lots of little projects. Oof.
Okay, that's too much.
No, I can do that all. And then complete a top, a t-shirt. Oh, that feels like a lot, but because I'm almost done with 2 of those, it shouldn't be too bad. Shouldn't be too bad at all. All right, let's talk stash. You can subscribe and like and end the video here if you don't care about stash. Otherwise, stick with me and see how I did on my stash busting goal of getting to 2,000 grams less than I started the year. What I used up this month, I used 262 grams of the Karen Colorama Halo for the crop or not cardi, and I used 135 grams of the Boboli, the Berroco Boboli in the purples and blues for the cowl. That was a total of only 397 grams. Now, keeping in mind, I've actually used a lot more for those other two projects, but I'm not counting that until I have either used up an entire skein or have completed the project. Now, I also gifted 200 grams of a Patton's North America in dark camo and 176 grams of the Bernat Blanket Ombre to my niece so that she could experiment with some different colors and types of yarn. And that was another 376 grams. So total out of my stash, not including a little bit of scrap here and there, was 773 grams. Not bad, but not fabulous either. Especially once I get to this next part. I really tried hard not to buy anything this month, but with that super secret project that I'm working on, it was not going to work with any of the yarn in my stash. I know we all say that, right?
Heard that before.
Yeah. Classic line that we use to buy more yarn. But it really truly wasn't. So I went out and bought the 3 skeins, different colors, the Simply Soft Tan Speckle, and that was I think that was Vintage was the colorway on that. The Simply Soft Mauve, and the Simply Soft Green. Now I am going to have to buy one more skein of the speckled one in order to complete that project. I don't think there's a chance of me completing it with there's not a chance. Let's change it that way. So that was 170 grams for each of those skeins. I also bought the yarn for the blanket, and I kept one additional skein of the 8 or so. I returned most of them that I didn't go with, but there was one that I actually kind of liked, so I kept that one. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but that one just went in my stash. So 2 of the blue, 2 of the blue camo, and 2 of the tan. I'm sure I'm going to need more of each of those as I go, but I didn't feel it was that necessary to buy the quantity that I needed. As long as that yarn color doesn't get discontinued, I at least wanted to start with 2 skeins of each. And if I'm like, yeah, this is a good kind of no-brainer project, then I can go out and buy some more. So that amounted to 1,504 grams. And I also received a late Christmas gift of 870 grams of Petite Bright White from Big Twist, and that is for the popcorn garland that I will be working on all year. So I purchased or received 2,374. So my total change was an increase of 1,601 grams. Did not do very well on decreasing this month. I went in the wrong direction by quite a bit, and I'm okay with that. I told you from the beginning, this was just hey, let's see how this works. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. Hopefully I don't increase it too much, but at least it keeps in the back of my mind to say, do you really need that? Is that something that you have a very clear plan for instead of just purchasing? I'm probably going to break that rule. It's okay. I'm good with it. So tell me, how did you do in January? What did you make? What did you buy? What did you get rid of? What are your plans for this month coming up? And make sure you like and subscribe and listen to my granddaughter.
Please like this video and subscribe to my grandma's channel.
And don't forget to hit the notification bell, because that lets you know when new videos come out. And I've recently changed my publishing cycle to be on Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings. So join me for another video soon, and we'll talk to you later.